story that I'm going to tell you is not for you. It's for me. But in telling it to you, by listening to me, you help me. You help me to let go of the story, to heal and feel safe in the world. And that's a gift and a generosity, and I thank you. The call came in at 10:30 in the morning on Sunday, July 13th, 2008. Lowell Fitch was on the phone. Lowell was the director of Camp Unilade, the Quaker Wilderness Camp in the Trinity Alps, where 2 generations of our family have hiked and worked and played, drank the good water. Lowell was telling me that there had been a car accident and that my daughter Laura was hurt. She was being airlifted by helicopter to the regional hospital in Medford. Is she going to be okay? I asked. She's hurt pretty bad. You better get here, was his answer. He was calling on a satellite phone, and we didn't have a very good connection, so I couldn't get much information. I heard through the windshield, head injury, broken neck. I just don't know. The camp doctor, Troll, also a lifelong family friend, was working at that hospital and was going to meet the helicopter there. At this point, I went into auto mode. I called a pilot I knew on San Juan Island. He was out on a bike ride. But within 20 minutes, he was at the Easton Airport and was getting into his plane. I called my sister, and she made a flight for me to Medford. I called Troll's cell phone and got to talk to my daughter in the ER. Told her I loved her. Troll told me what she knew. The camp counselors had been driving into town for the traditional intercession breakfast at Bob's Ranch House restaurant. I've partaken in that myself. It's omelet, French fries, coffee, milkshake. Laura was the front passenger in a Toyota 4Runner, seatbelted. The driver bent down to grab a CD and swerved. She overcorrected, and the vehicle rolled over 3 times. Laura took the initial impact in the windshield and broke her neck. Then she flopped out of the passenger window and hit the pavement with each rollover. Jesse Lyons was the first on the scene. I remember Jesse as the red-haired kid in the overalls with no shirt. But at this point, he was in nursing school, and all of the counselors had had wilderness medicine training. Jesse found Laura trying to get up and help the driver. He said he saw her head in a pool of blood and all broken up. He took a hold of her head and held it. He mobilized it, told her to stay still. He held her there and talked to her. He saved her life. In this very rural area near Etna, California, a paramedic responded within minutes, and a helicopter was there really quick. The Rogue Valley Medical Center, it turns out, is the region's best trauma center. And with miraculous logistics, I was at the hospital by the time they wheeled her out of surgery. Her surgery took more than 6 hours. Her neck, the C5 vertebra, was broken. They went through the front of her neck, the throat, to fuse it to 2 other vertebrae, stabilize the neck. The back of her head was broken like a ripe pumpkin that had been dropped. It took hours to get the gravel out, and there wasn't enough skin left to stitch it together in places. Her right arm was all torn up from road rash. Her right leg was smashed up. Her face was cut and stitched and black and bruised, and one of her eyes was swollen shut. She was alive. The waiting room spilled over with camp people. Laura's 2 brothers arrived from the Bay Area and from Portland. We all camped out in Laura's room, along with a dozen or more counselors. Sleeping on cots in a window seat, we made jokes, we took pictures, We stole the hospital slipper socks. Her brother John bought a VCR and some tapes at a Goodwill, and we watched The Princess Bride and ate microwave popcorn. We tried to get Laura to drink water and to take down some protein smoothies. 4 days later, we were lucky to be able to go over to Troll's house in Ashland to camp out for a little while. I tried to scrub the blood out of her shoes and clothing. Finally just went to Fred Meyer and bought her some new ones. We gathered the bits of her computer and the contents of her backpack that had been spread out over about a half mile of road. Laura got angry and impatient, tired of my constant presence. We tried an outing to the Ashland Food Co-op, and a little girl started screaming and crying, pointing at her when she saw Laura, her face and head like a Halloween horror mask. It was less than a week later we got to fly back to Seattle. Some friends picked us up at Boeing Field and drove us, or picked us up at SeaTac and were going to drive us to Boeing Field and got lost. And we nearly missed our flight. But when we walked in, Laura with her cane and her gruesome appearance, the Kenmore Air folks called the pilot and held the plane and made sure we got on it. Laura wasn't really working that summer at camp. She was visiting. Her seizures had become too frequent and too intense for her to be able to work in that setting. 2 years before, she was doing a WOOF stint, that's willing workers on organic farms, in southern Spain, and she started having seizures. So she came home and was diagnosed with epilepsy. She had hemangioma, like a tangle of vessels in the right temporal lobe that would sometimes bleed and cause the seizures. We don't know why, maybe from a bike accident a few years before, could have been congenital. But her seizures had accelerated from these partial absent seizures to some pretty scary grand mal seizures. That fall, after the accident, the seizures got much worse after all that head trauma, and the medication became less and less tolerable. She was in a fog a lot of the time and feeling pretty disassociated. She would be looking right at me and appear to be terrified. She would lose recognition. Once she could walk again, she'd find herself in the middle of Enchanted Forest Road, where she had walked hundreds of times and had no idea where she was. So she took the initiative to look into her options to deal with this epilepsy, and she decided to pursue brain surgery, even difficult to say. And it terrified me. It just terrified me. But she was determined, she was courageous, and she was so hopeful. The promise was no more seizures, no more drugs. The team at Swedish was amazing, just remarkable, competent, kind. We had to stay there for weeks on end, getting ready, going through periods where they would keep her awake for days at a time to induce seizures, measure the activity. She underwent painful procedures. She had endless extensive testing that mapped out the functions of her brain. On May 11th, 2009, we arrived in Seattle, had a fancy dinner in Capitol Hill, and then she got a badass mohawk haircut at a barber in the neighborhood. The surgery was performed by our hero, Dr. Ryder Gwynn, using an electronic map of every incision and every vessel that they would and would not touch, connected to a scalpel. The surgery went well, and Laura emerged, again, bruised and swollen, but feisty. I got this great picture of her looking really messed up and giving me the finger. I knew she was still in there. That first night, she started having seizures again. The surgeons told us it could just be the trauma from the surgery, the swelling in the brain. Things settled down, and we got to go home, but she was back in the hospital within a couple of days for another stay. She wasn't having seizures, but she was having that precursor feeling, and so they observed her for a week. And when she came out, she has not had a seizure since. She has not had medication since. It took a couple of years of recuperation before Laura felt ready to resume her life. She had to work hard to retrain her brain for simple things like following a conversation, matching faces and places with names, retaining information. She was a college student. She's a straight-A student. This was a real challenge for her. It was exhausting, frustrating, and scary. But then last June, Laura graduated from Cabrillo College in Santa Cruz with a degree in horticulture. To celebrate, she and her brother jumped out of an airplane. Her big passion right now is scuba diving. Epilepsy, scuba diving. She's always loved to push the envelope, never been afraid of taking risks. She's working on her master diving instructor certification. She's on her way right now to Maui, where she plans to live in her truck on some property owned by family friends. She's going to nanny for them, and she's going to guide tourists up waterfalls while she gains her residency so she can study marine biology and do more diving at the University of Hawaii. Laura's amazing. She is such a survivor, and I've learned so much from her. The power of hope, faith, determination. She's inspired me to be more open and vulnerable, to share more deeply, to feel less shame, to put myself out there and trust in uncertainty. And I'm still recovering from her accident. I know it's not about me. I know I'm lucky to still have her. I know mothers whose children have died, been paralyzed, or worse in similar accidents. I have to keep reminding myself that she is alive, that she survived, and that, as tough as it is, I cannot protect her from harm. We're such vulnerable creatures, humans. We hurl ourselves through life at incredible speeds against terrible odds in such soft and fragile packages, our bodies. The grief and loss of being human is extraordinary and constant, but we are survivors, my daughter Laura and me. And I know for damn sure that when the shit hits the fan, when the zombie apocalypse arrives, when the fairies stop running, I want my daughter